final episode of this short mini course or series around how to be a modern content creator. This episode is about the creator equation. Now, this is sort of a finale of sorts, but I'll probably continue this series down the line with added episodes and just add them to the playlist. But for now, this is the last one. And the creator equation is something I came up with because out of all the years I created content, I started noticing trends. Either I was good at one thing, but I wasn't good at the other thing. I was doing this thing, but I wasn't doing that thing. And here are the things that I'm referring to. So you have strategy plus automation times execution equals success. So your strategy is very important. So what I see a lot of people do is like they might execute really well. Like they get a whole bunch of content out over and over and over again. I kind of did that for a while, and then I had to reevaluate my strategy. Luckily, I started doing the strategy pretty early on, and I definitely think that the equation is first, second, and third kind of thing. Because you should develop your strategy first. You need to plan out what you intend to do as a content creator. What kind of content do you want to make? How do you want to make it? How do you distribute it? How do you repurpose it? All these things you should try to figure out as soon as possible. Even if you just get started and start making content and repurpose it later, that's fine. But you need to start thinking about it now. And so develop that strategy. You can use people like Gary Vee's strategy, but it's kind of advanced. And even though he simplifies it, and people like Doc Williams and myself have created alternative versions to simplify it even more so, or make it more detailed, the idea behind it is very multi-function, multifaceted creator level, meaning you have to done it for a while, put in the 100 reps, as we mentioned in previous episodes. And so the next thing, after you developed your strategy, is automation. And automation is really great, but it's a slippery slope. People often spend too much time fiddling around with these auto posters and creating this like, oh, I want to automatically send out quotes on my Twitter feed to kind of help with that thought leadership. Well, that's great. It worked in 2011. It doesn't really work now. Now, sending out tweets to build up thought leadership does work, but you generally have to make them yourself. You can't just quote other people. Curation only works to a degree, and in my opinion, curation only works on top of creation. Some creators do curation, and depending on your niche, you might still be able to get away with it on certain platforms. But curation should be an additive, not a replacement for creation, at least nowadays. And so that's what I mean by automation. They like automating that curation there. And I automate anytime I make a new blog post, video, or podcast across any of my channels. It automatically posts to my socials. And while that can be a little annoying, I did take the time to make different versions of the posts, so that way it at least cycles through a few of them, and I might go back and add some more too down the line. And Nuelink has been really great about that, because other tools don't give you options. You literally have one option. You can make it any way you want, but it can be really repetitive very quick. And a lot of those tools break down, like Zapier constantly broke on me, and so you waste a whole bunch of time trying to build out your automation. So just putting it out there, Nuelink, link down below if you want it. It's really helpful for automation. The last thing, and I'm actually going to get to the points here in a little bit, but this is kind of just the introduction to it, is the execution. And as someone who's made over 600 blog posts, hundreds of videos, hundreds of podcasts, and 7,000 TikToks, I can definitely say I have not executed enough. After countless pieces of content that I've made, I have not executed well enough. And so this is why I wanted to mention this in this video, because I think a lot of people think they've done so much. They've made 200 videos or 200 podcasts. That's great. Still not enough. And the reason being is that you could have done more in that time span. Think about, actually, when I started doing interviews, I was prolific. I started basically around April and May 2020 doing interviews because everyone was stuck at home. It was a great opportunity. I ended up doing around 60, I think, in 2020, and then I did about another 40 or so over the next year and a half. And since then, I've done a total of 170 or so between my two shows. And that was on my shows. I've done around 80 podcasts as a guest on other people's shows over the last 4 or so years. And that's a lot. But after 4 years, I could have done a lot more. I've seen other podcasters do 400 or 500. Now, comparison is the bane of all my creators. But it was interesting how I saw them do twice as many interviews as I did, despite the fact maybe their quality was actually better, but they were also focused just purely on the podcast. I was doing YouTube, podcast, and blog, not to mention newsletters too. And so while I'm not giving myself crap, I am also saying I could have done better, and I definitely could have executed way better on the solo content. I spent all my focus on work and on interviews that I didn't do the solo. And so this is my point, where I might have had great automation and great strategy, but I didn't do execution. One point when I was younger in my journey, I was doing great execution, even had some automations, but I didn't have the right strategy, and vice versa. It's you have to have all three for success, and that's where a lot of people struggle, and that's why I'm already 5 minutes in, which is what most of these episodes have been lengthwise total, and yet I haven't even got to my bullet points yet. So let's talk about them. Strategy is key. Develop a clear strategy that outlines your goals, your targets, your audience, and the content types that you want to create, and the distribution channels, because you got to figure out where you're going to be putting this stuff before you can really set up those automations. You need to set up those profiles too. And so a well thought out strategy provides that direction that you need to work towards, and it helps you stay focused on what really truly matters for your growth and for your brand. Because TikTok might be great for me, it may not be great for you. Pinterest may be great for you, but it barely affects me at all, right? And so you got to figure out what strategy is important for your type of content, your niche, and what you can create consistently. The next thing is leveraging automation. So like I mentioned before, automation can be a big, helpful gain to your following. People can actually see your content more often, because even if you post every single day, half your audience is not going to see that post just because they're not on that time of day. Or maybe they end up don't see it in the chronological feed at all because of just the way these platforms work now. So you have to be posting often, really, to try to reach every single follower. And you're most likely not going to get more than 80% of your following seeing your content at max, really. So using tools and automation software to automate these repetitive tasks, such as scheduling a post. I can't stand having to share my videos and blog posts onto social media across all these different platforms. So I do it automatically, right? And so it allows you to have more time to dedicate your energy towards content creation and strategic planning. Automation helps you have enough time to develop a strategy, helps you give you more time to actually execute that strategy. And so that's where that plays into that equation. The next bullet point, the last one here, is focusing on execution. Like I mentioned, I spent so much time on interviews, and I always bring this up, and I'm not mad that I did interviews. I'm mad that I didn't make time, at least one day a week or something like that, to solo videos. And had I just spent one day on blog posts, one day in solo videos, and then the other 5 days on the interviews, that would have been sufficient to keep me more consistent, and I would be farther along now than where I was. So no matter how good your strategy or automation tools are, success ultimately depends on how much you put out, how much you execute. And so consistently produce high quality content, adapt based on the analytics and performance, and maintain a regular posting schedule. Consistency is key. They always talk about that, and it really is true. The more consistent you are, the more likely you're going to grow. The more you execute your plan, the closer you are going to get to achieving your goals. This is the last thing I'm going to say on this. The creator equation is strategy plus automation times execution equals success. If you can follow that equation, you will be successful as a creator at some point. It takes time, be patient, and you'll get there.